My wife insisted we try therapy. "One last shot," she said. I agreed, thinking Dr. Sarah would help us fix what was broken. But during our final session, she did something completely unexpected. She looked directly at me and asked, "If you could start over completely, knowing what you know now, would you still choose this life?" The silence that followed changed everything. Hey, this is the Storyline Universe channel where we share stories that are real and feel so real, they'll make you question everything you thought you knew about life. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and give it a like. It really helps our channel grow. Now, let's dive into a story that changed everything. My name is David. I'm 34, and I live in a quiet suburb outside of Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a marketing manager for a tech company. Decent salary, nice house, 2-car garage, the whole American dream package. At least, that's what it looked like from the outside. My wife, Jessica, and I had been married for 8 years. High school sweethearts, college together, married right after graduation. Everyone said we were perfect for each other. Jessica is beautiful, organized, successful in her own career as a pharmaceutical sales rep. She has this way of making everything look effortless: perfectly decorated house, perfectly planned vacations, perfectly scheduled life. But somewhere along the way, perfect started feeling like a prison. It wasn't anything dramatic that brought us to therapy. No big fight, no discovered affair, nothing you'd see in a movie. It was more like we'd become roommates who occasionally shared a bed. Polite conversations over dinner, separate Netflix accounts, separate schedules. We moved around each other like choreographed dancers who'd forgotten they were supposed to be dancing together. Jessica noticed it first. She always notices everything first. "We need help," she announced one Tuesday evening, setting down her wine glass with that decisive click that meant she'd already made up her mind. "I've found a therapist, Dr. ATFWFE. Sarah Chen. She has excellent reviews, specializes in couples work." I looked up from my laptop. "Do you think we need therapy?" "David, when's the last time we had a real conversation? When's the last time you really looked at me when I was talking?" I couldn't answer because she was right. I couldn't remember. Dr. Sarah Chen worked out of a small office in a converted Victorian house downtown. Soft lighting, comfortable chairs, the kind of place designed to make you forget you were paying someone $200 an hour to fix your life. She was probably in her early 40s, Asian American, with this calm presence that made you want to tell her things you'd never said out loud. Our first session was awkward, like most first sessions probably are. Jessica did most of the talking, listing our issues like items on a grocery list: lack of communication, different life goals, intimacy problems. I sat there nodding, feeling like I was being diagnosed with a disease I didn't know I had. "David," Dr. Sarah said, turning to me, "what brought you here today?" "Jessica scheduled the appointment," I said automatically. "That's not what I asked. What brought you here?" I thought about it for a moment. I don't want to lose something good just because I don't know how to fix it." Jessica's expression softened slightly. It was the first honest thing I'd said in months. The sessions became routine. Every Thursday at 6 p.m., we'd sit in those comfortable chairs and dissect our marriage like a biology experiment. Dr. Sarah would ask probing questions. We'd practice communication exercises. Jessica would take notes in her perfect handwriting. But something strange started happening around the 4th session. I began looking forward to them. Not because I thought they were fixing anything, honestly. Jessica and I seemed to be growing further apart, not closer. I looked forward to them because for 1 hour a week, someone was actually listening to me. Dr. Sarah had this way of asking questions that made you think. Not the obvious ones like, "How does that make you feel?" but deeper ones. "When you were describing your work, your voice changed completely. Do you notice that?" Or, "You said you should want that. What do you actually want?" By the 6th session, I realized something uncomfortable. I was developing feelings for our therapist. It wasn't anything she did. She was professional, boundaried, never inappropriate. But there was something about being truly seen, truly heard, that I hadn't experienced in years. When she looked at me, I felt like I existed. When she spoke to me, I felt like my thoughts mattered. Jessica started skipping sessions occasionally. Work emergency. She'd text 30 minutes before we were supposed to leave. Or, I'm not feeling well. I'd go alone, and those individual sessions became the highlight of my week. How are you doing with everything we've been discussing? Dr. Sarah asked during one of these solo sessions. Honestly, I think Jessica's given up. She's going through the motions, but I can tell she's already checked out. And how do you feel about that? I was quiet for a long time. Relief, I finally admitted. And that makes me feel terrible. Why does it make you feel terrible? Because I should be fighting for my marriage. I should be devastated that my wife doesn't want to work on our relationship anymore. Dr. Sarah leaned forward slightly. Should is a dangerous word, David. It assumes there's a right way to feel about something this complex. That's when I made a mistake. Or maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe it was the most honest I'd been in years. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. Do you ever think about your clients outside of these sessions? The question hung in the air between us. Dr. Sarah's expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Professional concern, maybe, or something else. I think about my client's progress, yes. That's part of my job. That's not what I meant. Another long pause. David, I think we should talk about boundaries. But she didn't immediately launch into the speech about professional ethics that I expected. Instead, she was quiet for a moment, and when she looked at me again, there was something softer in her expression. You're in a vulnerable place right now, she said gently. It's natural to feel connected to someone who's listening to you, supporting you through a difficult time. But those feelings, are they wrong? I interrupted. They're human, but they're also complicated. I nodded, but something had shifted in the room. We both felt it. The following week, Jessica came to the session, but she was different. Cold, distant, like she was already somewhere else mentally. Halfway through the session, she stood up, abruptly. This isn't working, she announced. I've given this 6 months, and we're not any closer to figuring this out. Maybe some things just can't be fixed. She grabbed her purse and looked at me. I'll be staying at my sister's for a while. We can talk about next steps when you're ready. And just like that, she was gone. I sat there, stunned, staring at the door she'd just walked through. Dr. Sarah was quiet, letting the moment settle. How are you feeling? She asked after a few minutes. I should be devastated, I said. I should be running after her, begging her to come back. But I'm not, and I don't know what that says about me. Dr. Sarah closed her notebook and set it aside. When she looked at me, her professional mask had slipped just slightly. David, can I be honest with you? I nodded. I've been doing this for 12 years. I've seen hundreds of couples, worked through every kind of relationship crisis you can imagine. And sometimes, the hardest truth to accept is that two people can love each other and still be wrong for each other. Is that what you think about Jessica and me? She was quiet for a long moment. I think you've been trying so hard to be the husband you think you should be that you've forgotten who you actually are. And I think Jessica fell in love with an idea of who she wanted you to become, not who you really are. The words hit me like a physical blow, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. So, what do I do now? That's not for me to tell you. But I will say this, and I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to anyway. You deserve to be with someone who sees you, David. Really sees you. Not the version of you they want to create. The way she said my name sent something electric through me. There was an intimacy in it that hadn't been there before. Dr. Chen, I started. Sarah, she corrected quietly. Sarah, these sessions talking to you, it's been the best part of my week for months, and I know that's probably not appropriate to say, but David, she cut me off gently. I need to tell you something. My heart was racing. I was terrified of what she might say, but I needed to hear it. I became a therapist because I believe in helping people find their truth, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But I've never had a client make me question my own boundaries the way you have. The admission hung between us like a confession. What does that mean? I asked. It means that in 2 weeks, when our sessions officially end, we need to decide if we're going to pretend this conversation never happened, or If we're going to be honest about what's been building between us. I stared at her, hardly believing what I was hearing. And if we're honest? If we're honest, then we both know that what I'm feeling isn't professional, and it isn't ethical, and it could ruin my career. She met my eyes directly. But it's also the most real thing I've felt in a very long time. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. Jessica and I had one conversation about separating civil, practical, like we were discussing a business transaction. She'd already consulted a lawyer. I think she'd been planning this longer than she'd let on. My final session with Sarah was scheduled for a Thursday evening, her last appointment of the day. I arrived early and sat in my car in the parking lot, trying to figure out what I was going to say. When I walked into her office, she looked different, more nervous than I'd ever seen her. She'd closed her notebook before I even sat down. "David," she said, and even the way she said my name was different now. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Okay. If you could start over completely, knowing what you know now, would you still choose this life?" The question I'd been asked 6 months ago. The one that started everything. I looked at her, really looked at her. Sarah, who had seen me more clearly than anyone in years, who had listened to me, challenged me, made me feel alive again. "No," I said. "I wouldn't choose this life. I'd choose something real. Someone real. Even if it meant walking away from everything you've built?" Especially then. The silence that followed was different from all the others. It wasn't awkward or professional. It was full of possibility. Sarah stood up and walked to the window, her back to me. "I shouldn't be saying this. Everything about this goes against my training, my ethics, everything I believe about professional boundaries. But—" She turned around, and for the first time, I saw her not as Dr. Chen, my therapist, but as Saraha woman who was just as lonely and searching as I was. But 6 months ago, a broken man walked into my office, and somewhere along the way, helping him heal started healing something in me too. She moved closer, and I stood up to meet her. We were standing maybe 3 feet apart, and I could see the conflict in her eyes, professional duty warring with human need. "If we do this," she said quietly, "there's no going back. I'll have to refer your case to someone else. I'll have to recuse myself from anything involving your divorce proceedings. I'll have to risk everything I've worked for." "I'm not asking you to risk anything," I said. "I'm asking if you think what we have is worth the risk." She reached out and touched my hand, the first physical contact we'd ever had outside of a handshake. Her fingers were warm, soft, and the simple touch sent electricity through my entire body. "I think," she said, stepping closer, "that sometimes the most professional thing you can do is admit when something is bigger than your profession." When she kissed me, it was like every honest conversation we'd ever had condensed into a single moment. Soft at first, tentative, then deeper as months of careful professional distance evaporated. Her hands found their way to my face, and I pulled her closer, tasting the reality of something I'd only imagined. We broke apart, both breathing hard. "We can't do this here," she whispered. "Your place or mine?" She smiled, and it was the first completely unguarded expression I'd ever seen from her. "Mine. But David?" "Yeah? After tonight, everything changes. Are you ready for that?" I looked at this woman who had helped me find myself, who had seen through all my defenses and loved what she found there. "I've been ready for 6 months. 3 months later, Jessica and I finalized our divorce. It was surprisingly amicable, I think. We both knew we'd been holding on to something that had died years ago. She got the house. I got my freedom. Sarah left her practice and started working at a different clinic across town. We waited the appropriate amount of time, followed all the ethical guidelines for post-therapeutic relationships. But more importantly, we built something real. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty about how it ended, if I regret the choices I made. The truth is, I regret waiting so long to make them. I regret the years I spent trying to be someone I wasn't, living a life that looked perfect but felt empty. Sarah and I got married last spring. It was a small ceremony, just family and close friends. During her vows, she said something that still gives me chills. "You taught me that sometimes the most healing thing you can do is stop trying to fix what's broken and start celebrating what's real." That final therapy session didn't save my marriage. It ended it. But it also saved me. Sometimes the most therapeutic thing isn't learning to live with what you have, it's finding the courage to reach for what you actually want. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, what you want reaches back.